Hello and welcome back to Retro Heaven, guys. This is the fourth video of our Resident Evil 2 Retrospective series, and in this video we will take a look at the gameplay elements of this game. With that said, this is Daniel from Retro Heaven and welcome to Resident Evil Retrospective Part 4. As you could see in the previous videos, all aspects of Resident Evil 2 got extreme jump in terms of quality. And when the visuals and story aspects get improvement, it's fair to see the same jump in terms of gameplay elements. Before we start, I gotta repeat the same rules that we had in the previous videos, Resident Evil 1 Retrospective. We will give 2 scores to each aspect of the game. First one is looking at the game based on the time that it was released and the technology available back then. And the second one is in the eye of a modern gamer living in today's world. Camera and presentation. Camera and presentation in Resident Evil 1 was amazingly fresh for its time. And based on the story we have already told you in RE 1.5, you could see that the team was keen on topping RE1 with any means necessary. In Resident Evil 2, camera angles are more cinematic, and it's especially felt at the beginning of the game. The angle of camera they have selected at the streets of Raccoon City makes you feel the life was a part of this town not a long time ago. For example, before you enter the boss at the beginning of the game, you can see a dead man at a coffee table on the sidewalk, as he tried to have a good time and had a coffee and enjoy the life. These kind of things in the camera presentation of Resident Evil 2 make you think twice before moving inside the town, because you blink and you might miss one of the amazing things that shows Raccoon City was full of life a while ago. And obviously, a remote mansion out in the jungle could not provide the same effect. It's not only about the beginning of the game, and in general the camera position is much better in Resident Evil 2. But things are not all good and glorious, because there were some times that I could lose the sense of perspective easily. For example, after Iron dies and you defeat the boss, the ladder that comes down to you is almost in an angle that you cannot locate it inside the playing ground. There were some other examples of such mix-up, and I have to say this was the only issue I had with the presentation and the atmosphere of the game. With that said, our original score for the camera and presentation of the game is 98 out of 100. When it comes to the modern day camera and presentation, I gotta say that the game did much better than Resident Evil 1. It may be hard for some people to stand the pixelated resolution of that era, but the truth is that when you compare Resident Evil 2 with other artifacts of that time, you will see that it holds much better than many, and we will give it score 75 out of 100 in today's perspective. Combat. The combat aspect of Resident Evil 1 was like a fresh flow of air in a hot summer's day. The core aspect of the game was the same when it comes to the combat, but since our heroes had greater animation and a smoother maneuvering skill, we could see much better things than we saw in Resident Evil 1's fighting, and battling the enemies was much easier as a result. Once again, the same critics are applicable here. You can't run and fight, you can't reload at will out of the inventory, and you have to aim forward and then upward or downward. But all these are much cleaner and faster, and I could connect with them a lot easier as a gamer back then. On the other hand, different weapons felt a lot more reliable in this game. Your arsenal for Claire and Leon was almost too different, and this made a huge experience for each character. So personally I feel that it's great improvement overall. I gotta say, it's the same old feeling but with a much better execution. And God knows how hard it is to revert back to Resident Evil 1 after the smooth experience you had in Resident Evil 2. When it comes to giving the score, the late 90s will bring the score 75 out of 100 for this game. And this 75 out of 100 comes because of the improvements we had and the problems we have in the Resident Evil 2. When I look at this game in the eye of a modern gamer, I gotta say that I can feel connected to this game's combat a lot more than what I felt I could do. When you scale up the things to 2021, the score goes down, but not as much as what we saw in Resident Evil 1. So, we gotta give this game's combat in 2021 the score of 50 out of 100. Puzzles. If I wanna be honest, the puzzles in this game all turned into some mechanical object movements. There's almost no mandatory puzzle in this game, and all you have to do is pick up this key from this place and go to other place and use it. No need to use your brain at all, and these things are not called puzzles in my book. The feeling of the puzzle in Resident Evil 1 was a lot more felt, and the progression system in Resident Evil 2 was the actual puzzle compared to Resident Evil 1. So it's a downgrade coming from Resident Evil 1 and the cryptic puzzles you could see in Spencer Mansion. But on the other hand, inventory management is much more complex this time. The backtracking is a lot longer in the RPD, and the items are usually usable in multiple locations. On the other hand, the amazing zapping system was there. For example, when you find a side pack and a machine gun, you had a hard choice to make. You could leave it for the other hero or pick it up yourself. Obviously, dumb me was too greedy and picked everything in the first try, and in the second campaign left empty-handed and made the life much harder for myself than it should be. These kind of actions that would affect the other campaign was something quite fresh back then, and I gotta say, it is still amazing today. The best puzzle in this game are not a part of mandatory gameplay. Armory room puzzle and 2 different secret rooms in the lab are the best examples here. You can finish the game without even knowing about these ones, and these are the part of Resident Evil 2 that makes the replayability a lot better than Resident Evil 1. Personally, I feel that the secret research room was the best puzzle we could get in Resident Evil 2, and you could use the zapping system in the full effect to get access to this puzzle's result. In order to access to this room, you had to kill a boss in the lab, clear the computer keyboard, and then enter the password as guest and register your fingerprint. Then go to the other lab wing and activate your fingerprint. After that, you had to repeat almost the same thing with another character, and the second fingerprint gave you the access to open the door and see some amazing things inside that hidden lab. Puzzles for Resident Evil 2 deserve a score 80 out of 100 for the time of its release, and when it comes to 2021, the score will not change at all because the zapping system is still fresh up to this day. So 80 out of 100 for both aspects will be in order. Atmosphere, story, and engagement. The atmosphere of Resident Evil 2 is clearly the same structure that you have seen in Resident Evil 1. Mansion setting was changed to RPD station, and once you were done there, the middle section was the underground passageway in Resident Evil 1 and sewers in Resident Evil 2. In the end, both games made you reach a lab and escape before everything blew up high. But what makes Resident Evil 2 a whole lot better was the sheer size of each section. First of all, we had one of the hardest introductions ever in a Resident Evil game, and I remember getting killed in the alleys before reaching RPD non-stop for 1 hour straight before I can make it barely alive to the Kendo's gun shop. Right off the bat, an amazing thing for me was limping in danger mode. It was not present in the first game, and it made me go down easier when I got in danger health, and the experience was much greater than what we saw in the past game. This made the jump in the immersion I needed. When you reach RPD, things get more and more bittersweet. The feeling of a huge place was so amazingly mixed that it's hard to explain. Let's put it this way. This is an old and historical building, and at the same time you will see that the building is modernized to some extent. This mixed feeling is like getting back to a place where you lived once and left there for years. You have a sense of alienation and familiarity at the same time, and this is the same thing that I felt with the whole Resident Evil 2 atmosphere. The sewer section are much better and more reliable comparing to Resident Evil 1, and when it comes to the lab section, you will see how things have multiple extra layer of presentation details. When you reach the main hall in the center of the lab, you are surrounded by bottomless pits, and the feeling of nothingness is quite something to behold. One of the best aspects of the atmosphere in Resident Evil 2 is the sound design of the game. If you want to feel what's the meaning of this, try some of these sections. Music in the vertical moving train yard still gives me goosebumps. And if you want to feel the sound effect and feel loneliness in the game, just go to the West office and listen to the sound of the fan rotation. The feeling of loneliness that comes from this rotation is amazing. But the best example of sound in this game for me is the metal staircase between the West office and upstairs. When you get there, the moaning of zombies can be heard in the wind, and you feel like there's a city of dead outside and you're not safe there at all. What's funny is that this section of the game is one of the safest places that you could find in the whole scenarios. You will never get hurt, you will never face any enemy, but this sound effect is so strong that I can't stand there for long, and I feel frightened even hearing those voices. This aspect of Resident Evil 2 is extremely well for me, and I have to give it a full 100 out of 100 for both back then's score and today's score. Control scheme. We have discussed the tank control in details in Resident Evil 1 Retrospective, and my opinion did not change in this regard. If you want to see a game that shows static type of camera and 360-degree movement scheme, then please go and check Legacy of Kain Defiance and see why these two are not mixed up very well. In Resident Evil 2 the tank control is much better than Resident Evil 1, but there is still some room for perfection. And we will give the control scheme for this game 95 out of 100 for the time of its release. The score for 2021 will remain the same because there's nothing you can do in the pre-rendered background that works better than tank control. So 95 out of 100 for 2021 as well. Extra contents. Resident Evil 1 did not have much of extra content, but Resident Evil 2 takes what was there and dialed it up to 100. You will have access to two different characters with separate storylines right in the beginning. But when you finish the game with one of them, you will give another save for alternate campaign. And this alternate campaign for each character will bring you total of 4 campaigns for the main story. After that, if you did not get the rank A in any of the campaigns, you won't see anything new. But if you get it, then you will get 4th Survivor as a great treat. This is the canon story of Hank escaping the city with a sample of G-Virus. Once you complete this minigame, you will be treated to a hilariously scary game. Tofu mode is the same thing that you have played as Hank, but this time instead of playing as a badass commando, you play as a huge chunk of tofu moving around and, speaking some gibberish thing in Japanese. The funny thing is that it was actually the hitbox detection system for the game's testers, and made it to the final product as a joke. This is the hardest thing you can find in Resident Evil 2 because all you have is a knife and not much items in terms of healing. If you think that's the end, then you are wrong, because the DualShock version of the game brought Extreme Battle to the board. This is another minigame with 4 playable characters you need to unlock. Claire, Leon, Ada, and Chris will be playable. Chris even has a new updated model for this game. You have to get back from the end of the game to the beginning to obtain some antivirus bombs, and the things is some kind of a what if scenario. This minigame have multiple levels of difficulty, and in order to get the full experience of what Extreme Battle has to offer, you need to play it at least 12 times. All these games and mini campaigns will give you a package of something like 24 hours of pure gameplay, and just add the unlockable guns to feel why this is one of the best classic Resident Evil 1 games in terms of extra content. Based on this, I will give this game on its release date 100 out of 100, and in 2021 a score will be a bit lower as 90 out of 100. In the end, this game got a score of 548 out of 600. That translates into 91.3 out of 100 for the release dates, which is a damn good score if you ask me. Modern day score is obviously lower, and the total Resident Evil 2 score in this aspect based on 2020 look is 490 out of 600. That can translate into the average of 81.66 out of 100, which is once again a great score for a game that's older than many of our audience. So what do you think? Do you think this game deserves this score or not? Please leave your score in the comment section and let us know why you have improved or decreased the scores that we have given. Okay, thank you for watching this video, guys. Please like it and share it with your friends because we want to have more awesome audiences such as yourself. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and leave a comment and tell us what you want and what you need to see inside the channel. With that said, this is Daniel from Retro Haven, and I will see you guys in the next one.